I want to welcome everyone to Good Morning Cannabis, and I have my friend Frank. And Frank, how do you say your last name?
Manganella.
I love it. It's a nice Paisano name. My mother's maiden name was Alfieri. Sicilian?
Part mixed.
Okay. All
Uh,
right.
my
That's,
last name is about as much Italian as I can actually speak. So that's it.
okay. That's
It's taken me
so
57 years to learn that.
wonderful. So Frank, wanted to welcome you. We're going to do a more formal introduction in a minute, but first question that we always ask people. So what's the craziest thing that ever happened to you, Frank? The craziest thing?
Non-cannabis related?
Anything you want, my friend. It could be
Wow.
cannabis, non-cannabis. What's the craziest thing that ever happened to you?
Well, I did grow up in Queens, New York, so there's a lot of craziness surrounding me, but that's a tough question to answer. God, I guess the craziest thing that ever happened to me was um, get into a multiple car accident after spending a late night in Manhattan.
Wow.
And ironically, a couple of the cars that I hit were off-duty cops. So it was pretty traumatic. And speaking of cannabis, I knew some of the officers, and the first thing one of the officers says, first thing you should do right now is go to the back of the car and put the bong under the seat. So that's my cannabis. But I destroyed my aunt's car. She had to
Okay.
go to defensive driving, and yeah, it was a really stressful time. So there's a couple of lawsuits, but everything worked out. I did not go to prison for that at all. So thank
That's
God.
good. That's good. I mean, that's good you didn't. So let's kind of get right into your proper intro. Tell us a little bit about your background, what you're doing right now, and what you've done in the past, and why is it that we're even having this discussion? I mean, I'm calling on you as a cannabis expert, so let's talk a little bit about that.
Sure. Before I joined the cannabis industry, I spent 3 decades on Wall Street in investment banking, credit portfolio management on the trading side. That afforded me to travel the world, where I had offices in London, Stockholm, Singapore. Um, really do not brag about Germany and Frankfurt, but I was also stayed out there as well and spent quite a bit of time out there. And I usually did that out of the role of like global head of FICC or some other asset class in Wall Street. So that was 30 years. And I kind of like stumbled onto cannabis, knew about the plant for a long time from the 70s. And I was approached by a couple of ex-colleagues on Wall Street that actually moved into the cannabis industry, and they asked me to kind of take a look at it. When I retired for the second time in 2014 from Wall Street with a garden leave 2015, I needed something to do when I grew up because I knew I was not going to stay at home. So I wound up researching the industry, met some people, went to my first conference in Las Vegas in 2015, and started doing some investments in the industry. Different ticket sizes on our investment strategies. But as I equated to, it was kind of like getting an MBA in cannabis, and I
Yeah.
needed to cut my teeth. And of course, like everyone else, I started out west in California, the Pacific Northwest, and started, waiting for the opportunity for the East Coast to happen. And here we are.
It's amazing. So let's talk a little bit about, what do you see happening on the East Coast, and now how are you positioning yourself as an expert? And I really, what I'm interested also in hearing from you is when you're looking at the West Coast and what happened there, is there any lessons that you think the East Coast can learn? And
Sure.
how are you messaging that right now to your client base?
Sure. So one of the first, and I would say the largest investments I personally made in the industry was with a cannabis cultivation and a retail license in West Hollywood. And really just got my teeth and found out how the market worked and how the illicit market worked, which still dominates pretty much the United States.
Mhm.
And along the way, watching how they went into adult usage and comparing that to what happened in Colorado. So we forget Colorado was a leader, and Colorado went through their ups and downs as well. But in California, there was this goal to have the right program in place, social equity, trying to convert the illicit market into the legal market. And a lot of that failed along the way. And a lot of it was, it was either rushed or done improperly. And you can take lessons from what worked in other states and what did not work, and try to apply that to the East Coast and how we approach the East Coast. We started doing a little bit of that in Massachusetts because that was really kind of, Michigan, we consider East Coast, but East of Michigan, but Massachusetts, we really kind of cut our teeth in there, and that was our first foray into Michigan. So we got involved in a few licenses out there, and we continue to look at some other opportunities in Michigan. But now in the East Coast, we're trying to, tri-state area and 3 different regulatory environments, and
Yep.
it's fragmented just here in, right in the tri-state area. And while there was always a goal to kind of like converge regulation, it's not happening that way. And for us, it's really a rush to the finish line because New York feels the pressure. For example, Connecticut just started, they just opened up the applications for distro, for distribution. So we're involved in doing something in Connecticut for distribution. We're waiting for New Jersey to open that up. We're waiting for New York to open that up. And we're seeing this fragmented opportunities where one day we are looking at a retail license application in New Jersey, and now we're looking at a hemp cultivation conditional license in New York. So really just jumping around. And for us, the challenge is the speed of which these programs are coming together. New York's historically been very slow, but the OCM, whether you agree with everything they've done or not, I have my opinions. They're moving forward, and there is a lot of pressure. And understanding that New Jersey is issuing licenses way before we are, and here you go. You knew it was going to put pressure on New Yorkers.
It's kind of amazing. So, as far as if you were to advise someone who's looking to get into this space, what are some of the first things that they should do?
We kind of have our own due diligence when we meet with people that want to get into the industry. And if someone wants to be a cultivator, the first question is, have you ever farmed before? You know how much it's going to cost
I've
to
grown
do this?
tomatoes. Does that count? Jersey tomatoes, does that count?
It might actually, but I don't know. But it's a lot cheaper to grow tomatoes in a backyard than it
That's true.
is. But yeah, no, it's trying to put there. You have wonderful opportunities here, but really people should stay in their lane.
Yeah.
And to claim that I will be a cultivator and have the best strain ever, when I have not gone through the trials and tribulations of multiple cycles and understanding how things work, that's pretty. This is not a YouTube. This is not a YouTube
Right.
type of advisory service. It's not like that. There's some smart growers out there, some amazing growers. So what we try to do is we want to understand the story of why you want to enter the cannabis space. Where do you see your role in the cannabis industry? Some people just want to be CFOs. They come from a financial background and they want to use their, financial acumen to do something. If it's someone who is maybe someone who's operated underground that has a client list, that has a menu, and wants to do delivery, we can look at it 2 ways. Maybe we should open up a retail store, or maybe you should just look at delivery, and again, state by state, different ways of doing this, or sometimes a combination of the both. So really it's about what the person's skill set, what their goals are. And while you have social equity, you have a social equity program in place, it doesn't mean you can get that license quickly. So then you have to build a team around them.
Right.
And we call it HR gap analysis. So we look at who the team is and try to fill in that team with some expertise and some advisors. And it's a challenge. It's a challenge because a lot of people just believe because they fit a certain criteria they can get a license. You really need to put a good plan in place, and it will be very competitive. It will be
Yes.
very competitive. And that's why you
Yes.
need, service providers that, are doing this, application writers, groups. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to plug groups like yourself, but, that work on
Plug
the
us.
financial
Like that.
projection. Yeah. And doing cannabis financial projections are totally different than doing something where, it's a SaaS model where we're going to have 100 subscribers a month. So you need outside services to help you. And I think that's where it's not a do yourself type of application.
Yep. Agreed. Agreed. Well, that's great. One of the questions we asked, I know you may have kind of touched on it, but so when you're thinking back, what made you get into the cannabis space? I know you said you picked cannabis, but
Mhm.
why cannabis of all things?
Um, well, I'm true and true a Wall Street person and a trader and a portfolio manager by design, a risk taker. And That's changed considerably. Banking laws and regulations since the financial crisis have changed considerably. So for me, I needed to do something that I felt passionate about. So when I first got into the industry, I was all about medical marijuana, and I could give two hoots if adult usage came in. And I've always made this analogy. As far as I'm concerned, New York City's been legal since the 70s,
Yeah,
since I was a kid and before then. So there's no shortage of cannabis supply in New York City.
true.
Maybe not through the proper channels, but for me, it was all about looking at the medical side of it. And I did get involved with a few companies in the beginning, trying to see if we can come up with some good ideas. Obviously GW Pharma was one of
Okay.
the standouts. But biotech is a very expensive business, and very few actually make it. But I did like the science, and actually one of the first groups I worked with and got involved in, and I still work with, is a group. It's an R&D group out of Massachusetts. So I'm not plugging anyone. They can go to my website and probably figure it out. But they were working on transdermal patches and some other methods of delivery, and we would basically have an IP transfer to all the license holders to actually apply the API and distribute that. So we were more, how do we get this into the body in a different sort of way? I was kind of like really like that. I like that idea, and I was always hoping that we can do some more research. And for me, that was one of the reasons I wanted to, promote, deschedule cannabis as a whole, is to promote more research and government grants. Obviously, now you see the opportunities that are coming in on the adult side, and now we're looking at brands and other opportunities. So we wanted to get descheduled no matter what.
Great. So, if people wanted to get in touch with you, because I know you have a lot of good things that you can provide to them, how would they get in touch? What's the best way? Give me some websites or emails or something. It'll be also in the, when we're sending this out, but if you could just plug yourself a little bit, that would be great.
Sure. I should know my email at the top of my head, but I'll give you one of them. It's Frank at 3A Ventures. That's the number 3A Ventures with an S, cap.com. And you'll have an info, and all of us get that. We get redirected. So anybody comes in an info contact form, we'll get to see that. I can probably give you a longer one, but I'll probably do that when you provide that on
Sure. When we
LinkedIn.
send it out, you can definitely
Yeah,
do us.
sure.
Right, this
And
has
you'll see
been.
me on LinkedIn, and you can see me on LinkedIn. And
Yep.
again, my websites and my LinkedIn profiles are not world class, but we're busy doing a bunch of other things.
It's no problem. So I mean, so you're a kindred spirit, my friend. I do like you a lot, and that's why I wanted you to be
Thank
on
you,
this Good Morning Cannabis program. And I'm going to sign off because we're trying to
Okay,
keep it to a limit. But you will be back on again when all this gets even bigger. So have a great
awesome.
day, Frank.
You too. Thank you, guys.